Hi everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Not really welcome back. I haven't posted a video in like super a long time. So, just hello, I guess. Today I wanted to dive into probably one of my favorite manga series I've read to date. Um, very, very unique, let's say. Emotionally intense. Goodnight Punpun. 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 Punpun, um, written by Inio Asano. It is very dark and it it's a really dark series, and there's a lot of more profound exploration of more darker aspects of life, and it's wrapped up in this guise of being a coming of age story. So, buckle up, boys. We're gonna go on not too deep, but like, I don't know, like maybe a kiddie pool dive. I wouldn't say it's a deep dive. So, I would like to start out by doing a brief summary. I'm gonna give as much detail as I can without totally spoiling the series for anyone that would want to read it, because it is not a super popular series. Like, there are people that have posted about it from what I've seen on TikTok, but it's definitely not like, I don't know, Berserk or something like that that had a bit more of a cult following that became more popular. So this one, from what I've seen, isn't all that popular online yet. So I want to do just a few crumbs of explanation. The series, as I have here, this is the full series. So it's seven volumes, but each book is separated into parts. So part one, part two, etc. So there are 13 parts in total over the 7 volumes. I know. So, Goodnight Punpun, or Osayami Punpun, is a coming of age series, technically. It follows the main character, Punpun Punyama. He's a young boy that is depicted as this bird like cartoon character throughout his entire tumultuous journey from childhood all the way into adulthood. As I mentioned, the series does dive into some deeper subject matter and more mature themes, including mental illness, uh, let's say mental illness, existential angst, and like searching for meaning, searching for belonging in a seemingly indifferent world. So, I'm going to give a brief summary of the entire series. So, it's separated into the different times, the different phases of Punpun's life. So, part one and two are childhood. So, Punpun Punyama, which apparently isn't even his real name, it's a nickname, I guess, Punpun, but you actually don't find out his name for the entire series. So that's just what he's called. Punpun Punyama. He is introduced as a naive and optimistic elementary school boy living in a small town in Japan. And as I said, he is depicted as this bird figure throughout, well, not this figure specifically, but he is depicted as like a bird like creature throughout the entire series, which starkly contrasts with the realistically drawn humans which is obviously an artistic choice. It symbolizes his Punpun's internal world and struggle to fit into society. And also, I feel like it was an artistic choice from the author's perspective, because you look at this and you're like, oh, cute, that looks fun, that looks silly, or whatever. And then you pick it up and you realize, holy fuck, I need therapy now. I feel like it was a little bit of a trick to get people maybe to read it, to get people maybe to think deeper. I think it was an interesting creative choice. So, Punpun's father, Yuichi, he's abusive and is eventually arrested for attacking Punpun's mother, who subsequently ends up in the hospital. His mother, Momoko, is emotionally detached. Punpun's uncle, who also lives with them, his name is also Yuichi, takes on a bit of a caretaker role for Punpun, though he is a very deeply flawed person and is struggling with his own problems. I'm also going to mention that although Punpun is drawn like this, his entire family is drawn like this as well. So I think it's so that you can't have any idea as to what he would look like. Maybe there's a little more to it than that, but I think it's so that you can't defer what Punpun might look like as a character. Another important part of the childhood phase in Punpun's life is Aiko Tanaka, which is Punpun's first crush. She becomes a very central figure in his life, and I believe that she represents an idealized form of love and escape from his home life. Aiko's family and home life is also very troubled, but she deals with her issues in a more rebellious, outward manner. Punpun kind of holds everything in and just isolates, I guess. So that is the childhood phase. Next up, we have early adolescence. So he enters middle school and he becomes more aware of the harsh realities of the world. Punpun's academic and social life are kind of marked by bullying and isolation. He retreats into these fantasies where he's often speaking to God, which is depicted as, I wouldn't say an abstract figure, it's a man's face, it's like a floating head, and he offers him cryptic advice. His uncle, when he was little, told him, whenever you want to speak to God, you just have to say this phrase and God will appear. So you say, "Dear God, tinkle tinkle hoy," and God appears. Dear God, tinkle hoy. And then he will give him advice, although I wouldn't really say it's advice. I would say almost like antagonizing or something. Anywho, actually, fun fact, that photo of the man's face, who is God in this story, is one of the author's friends, I believe. He's on the back of all of the books as well. So Punpun's mother returns home from the hospital, but her relationship with Punpun remains strained. She eventually ends up attempting suicide and leaves Punpun feeling more isolated and more burdened. Punpun's relationship with Aiko becomes more complex, and they both have to deal with their own issues, their own family trauma, I guess. Both work in this instance. They make a plan to run away together, but these plans end up falling through. Not for any fault of either of them, but because of this, it kind of deepens Punpun's feelings of guilt, helplessness, and despair. Late adolescence, so high school. Each phase of his life is reflected by it. You don't really know how old he is. It's just high school, middle school, childhood, adulthood. They do mention his age here and there, but it's not really, I would say that it's not really pivotal to the story, I guess. You don't really have a pinpoint of how old he is at any given time because these things are happening over a span of time. Late adolescence, high school, which marks an increased isolation and a decline in his mental health. So you get a bit of a backstory for his uncle Yuichi, which shows his struggles with guilt and redemption. You meet Uncle Yuichi's girlfriend, Midori, which adds just another layer of complexity to Punpun's understanding of adult relationships. Anyone that's read it knows. He is reunited and reconnects with Aiko. They rekindle their plan to escape together to leave town. At this time, their relationship becomes toxic and they feed into each other's traumas and delusions, which leads us to the next part of his life, which is early adulthood, which revolves, I don't even know what book that would be at this. Obviously, there's a lot more that happens in the story than what I am listing. These are just like the main points that are specific to Punpun as a character. But there's some other weird shit that happens that doesn't have anything to do with him really. Early adulthood, so that would be like part 10 to 12. Punpun and Aiko end up leaving town together, and their journey takes a bit of a dark turn as they both have to confront their demons. They attempt to leave their hometown to have freedom, to be on their own. Punpun had already been living on his own for a while at this time. I believe he was in college, but Aiko still lived at home with her mother, and you find out at this time how bad her relationship with her mother was and how abusive her mother was to her. So they try to skip town, seek freedom, start fresh, and their traumas catch up to them, which leads to a series of very upsetting and tragic events. Their journey involves some criminal acts, which deepen Punpun's sense of guilt and self-loathing. Aiko's mental state really deteriorates, and she becomes increasingly desperate and unstable. Their relationship, like, they're technically in a relationship at this point, but it's very unclear as to whether or not Punpun even has feelings for her anymore at this point. It's very scary. He ended up becoming what he hated, and she becomes, as I said, she deteriorates her mental state and she becomes very unstable and desperate, but she's like clinging on to him, but she's clinging on to him because she has no one else, and she's willing to do whatever she needs to in order to be able to be with him. The climax of their journey is marked by a tragic confrontation that forces Punpun to face consequences of his actions and face the reality of the situation that he's gotten himself into. The final volume, the conclusion, Punpun attempts to find closure and peace. This is, I want to say, 10-ish years after he left town with Aiko. He reflects on his life, his relationships, the choices that he's made. He's come to terms with the pain and suffering that he has had to endure and the pain and suffering that he's caused to others. The series ends on a kind of melancholic but hopeful note, suggesting that the past can't be changed, but we can still hope for a possibility of healing and growth and understanding for the future. So, themes, mental illness. We've got, well, suicide and suicidal ideations are very prominent in this story. I'm not gonna dive too much into that specifically because it might ruin some things. Existential angst, I feel like the entire time there's this really nihilistic view portraying life as just a chain or a series of very painful experiences with the occasional fleeting moment of happiness. And I think having that view is dangerous, and I think being someone like Punpun who has a view like that, it can cause you to go down a very, very bad road. And I mean, if you don't have anyone around you that is going to tell you otherwise, then how are you going to get any better? There's also a lot of dysfunctional family, broken home situations, which are, I think, a pretty central theme in this story. Punpun sees his father beat his mother and go to prison. Seeing those things as a child and having those kinds of things ingrained to you kind of confuses a child into thinking that that's what a relationship or that's what a marriage or whatever should look like. And you see that later on when he is with Aiko, that he did have his family's, this dysfunctional family life really did shape his worldview and his emotional state because he didn't know how to fucking act. Obviously, growing up is another theme in this story. It's a coming of age story, technically. Transitioning, the painful transition from childhood to adulthood, childhood innocence into adult reality. And it shows how the loss of innocence and confrontation with harsh realities can really shape your identity. Lastly, I would say love and relationships. So, as I mentioned, he saw his parents the way that his parents were, so that's normalized for him at a young age. His idealized love for Aiko contrasts with the destructive nature of their actual relationship. He was a shitty boyfriend to her for how short of a relationship they ended up having. I think having this idealized image in your mind of what your partner could be is also super unhealthy, which is what he had. He loved this girl for such a long time. He ended up stalking her and moving to where he thought she might be near. He saw her at a train station and moved near that train station, only to find out that she was nothing like she was like as a child when they first knew each other, when he first became so enamored and infatuated. It's like he did all of this and then it was for naught. And it kind of makes me think of like a situation where, let's say you have this really gorgeous girl at, I don't know, school, I guess you're in college. You have this really gorgeous girl in your class and you finally get the courage to ask her out. You go out on a date and she can't fucking hold a conversation, or she's boring. It's like the same kind of thing. You have this idealized notion of what this person could be like, and it doesn't end up matching up with what you had created in your mind for them. Goodnight Punpun is a profoundly emotional and intense manga series that resonated with its readers, resonated with me, due to its portrayal of life's darker aspects, but also hope and understanding and, you know, the balance, I guess. It is, I would say, quite depressing story. There are a lot of triggering themes, I would say, which I didn't necessarily discuss, and it is a hard read, I think. That being said, I did enjoy it a lot. I did like being able to see Punpun change you see him change physically on the outside. See, he changes, he grows horns when he's like, I don't know, fucking angry. It's a very interesting concept to have a character be so like vastly different from everyone else, but it has nothing to really do with their character. They don't appear like that to the characters in that world. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I hope to do more manga reviews and discussions going forward. Let me know what you think of the series, if you've read it, if you thought it was like triggering, if you loved it, if you hated it. Let me know what you think. I will say a quick little snippet. If you enjoyed the show BoJack Horseman on Netflix, I think you'll enjoy this series. It has a similar kind of a lot of very similar themes. So, anyway, let me know what you think and if there are any other series or whatever that you would like to hear about. Until then, bye bye.